Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our October Legislative Committee meeting. It's been a month since we've been together. Well, actually, we were together, some of us, on the meet and greet in Savannah. So it's good to be with you all again. And we have a special treat for you today. We have invited Kevin Harris, our Director of Legislative or Governmental Affairs. We've changed titles. We've invited him back, and he's so graciously accepted because we had talked about in our meet and greet and previous meetings that we had that people wanted to know more about the legislative process and how to find legislators and cruise around the Georgia Assembly website and things like that. So we've also got Miss Emma McCullough. She is the newly named Deputy Director of Governmental Affairs with us today. So can you see my screen okay, everyone?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint for Kevin and Emma to do. It's going to be a workshop, and we're going to cover a lot of ground. So we're excited about this. And Kevin, I want to welcome you. If you want to introduce yourself real quick while I get the PowerPoint up and ready, we'll hold questions, or if you have a question, just put it in the chat or wait until the end of the workshop. And then if your questions aren't answered by the end of it, please, this is about education and teaching you all about everything on the legislative side. So if it's not covered, please speak up. All right, Kevin, go for it.
How are y'all doing today? Hope everything's going good. I was just communicating with Emma to make sure she was on. I'm very excited to be on here and just make sure that we're continuing to sort of merge that partnership with GPHSA, and just thank y'all for being available and on board for this. We do have a new staff member that I'm very pleased to represent. I believe she's logging on right now because I forgot to give her the login information, so that was my fault, not hers. But so she'll be on shortly. It's good to see some very friendly faces on here. Just thank y'all for joining us and being on. What we wanted to do, and Vicki, if you've got that presentation, if you want to go ahead and put that up.
Okay.
Would you be able to do that for us?
Yes.
Okay.
See if, let me know if it's showing.
I see it perfectly.
Okay, great.
So if you notice, we've even got the new template up.
I see that.
So that's good. But yeah, so what we're going to walk through is some of this stuff we went over, or I went over during the workshop, during the association meeting a month or so ago, but I've included some of that in this presentation. Emma put this together for us, so if it's good, um, if it's good, Emma's just going to come join me if it's okay, and we're going to tag team on this. So, sorry about that. Emma, can you see this? Are you available? Okay. Sorry, I caused some problems for us. This is Emma McCullough. Emma's going to be the new Deputy Director of DHS Government Affairs. She comes to us with a great resume, a lot of strong experience, and I am elated to have her. She's already worked in the Capitol, and she will have her master's degree by the end of fall, by December. So from West Georgia, just elated to have her. She has worked with our Chief of Staff in the past, once upon a time, with Craig Foster. So she knows Craig, and Craig's a great guy, and this is going to work really well moving forward. So with that
Very
said,
excited. We are so excited to have you guys.
I'm just telling you, our outreach potential just tripled and quadrupled.
Yes.
Because Emma's on board, because she's just the arms and legs we've never really had in governmental affairs, and her contacts and the way she knows a lot of people. So it's really going to help. So if you would, Miss Vicky, please go to the next slide. There we go. So what we thought was today's workshop, we know that we have a little less than an hour, and what we want to cover is the special session, just to make sure everybody knows what's going on with that. And assessing your government. We're going to talk about my voter page in the General Assembly website. And then we want to talk about processes. We want to talk about legislative process, the legislative tracking, LexisNexis, and the state budget. So that's sort of the direction we're going to go in. And like Vicki said, we're just going to continue to roll, and we're tag teaming this. So I'll go through some of it, she'll go through some of it. And at the end, if you've got questions, either put them in chat. And if I'm smart enough to see it, we can answer it live. And I'm probably not smart enough to see it. So at the end, just sort of keep those coming, and we'll answer at the end. So with that, Vicki, next slide, please. So I don't remember how many of you were in the workshop, but I'm just going to, this is a brief reminder that each of you, basically the purpose of this workshop is to basically talk to each of you and make sure that you're aware of basically who you are, where, how you can represent GPHSA, and where you actually are in the picture. So the first part of this is talking about you personally and basically figuring out who your representatives are. So we're going to give you some sites, and Vicki, if it's okay, we will forward this presentation, or you can forward this to the committee members afterward.
Sure.
If that's okay with you.
Yes, that'd be great.
So you're in districts. There's the federal government and state government. All of us have 2 U.S. senators. Currently, that is Senator Raphael Warnock and Senator John Ossoff. There are 2 new U.S. senators from Georgia. And then we have 14 congressional districts. So no matter if you're in Idaho, New York, or Georgia, the population is relatively equal in those 535 districts. Here in Georgia, we grew by about 1 million people, but that wasn't enough to get a new congressional district. But they will have to redraw these maps. If you remember from the special session, Governor Kemp has called a special session on November 3rd for them to come back and draw the maps to make everybody one vote, one person again. So what I'm showing you now is the maps as they exist when you voted in 2020 election cycle. So you have 14 congressional districts. And if you'll notice, Atlanta has a lot of people. So that's why the little purple district, Congressional District 5, is so small. And then if you look on the bottom left-hand corner where the lighter purple, lilac, violet, whatever you want to call it, the light purple is what I would call it. That's a lot of people, but a lot of land, because there's fewer people in Southwest Georgia. So we're looking at those districts, roughly each district has the same amount of people. As all of us on the call know, more people, Atlanta has grown and South Georgia is not growing as fast as North Georgia is. So basically those 14 districts will be redrawn to make sure one person has one vote. So that's the Georgia congressional districts. If you'll keep moving, the next slide, please. We have 56 state senators in Georgia. This is the map of the state Senate as currently. Again, they'll redraw them starting November the 3rd for next cycle. So if you'll look again, Vicky, if you go ahead and go to the next slide, that's Metro Atlanta. So basically, if you're looking at a Senate district, if you look at Metro Atlanta versus as a whole, again, there's a lot more people in Metro Atlanta, so their districts are smaller. There's 56 state Senate seats that will be drawn. And then Vicky, if you'd go ahead and go to the next slide, the next one is the state house map. So if you'll look down in deep South Georgia on the very bottom of your map, District 174, that is where the O'Keefe and Okie Swamp is. In some other towns, you've got Folkestone, you have Waycross, you have some of the places down in that area. That district's 56,000 people. And then if you look up toward Metro Atlanta, this district is so small, there's so many people there, you can't even make out some of the numbers in Metro Atlanta. So if you'll go into the next slide, that's the state house maps. And again, so to make sure that each person in Georgia has one vote and the districts are the same population-wise, all these are going to be redrawn November 3rd. State House, State Senate, and the congressional districts. So that way you've got access to the current maps. And as soon as they approve these maps, we'll get out the new ones to you just so you've got them. Vicky, if you'll go to the next slide. So a great resource I hope that y'all take advantage of is the My Voter page by the Secretary of State's website. You can literally, and I'm very thankful for Emma for putting her information in there. I apologize, please don't disclose this to anybody outside that, but it basically, what it does, if you look at her address, that has her precinct in there. So when you put that in, you use your first initial, last name, your county, and your date of birth, just to prove it's you. And then once you hit that page, inside that page, when you click on, you're going to be able to get the direction to your polling places. You can get the early voting information. And if you look down through there, the reason this is so good is this will give you all the statewide elected officials. It will give you the congressional district map of where you live. It will show you your U.S. Senate district, your U.S. House district, and it will tell you exactly what you live in. So she lives in Gwinnett, so they're the Gwinnett Judicial District. Where I live, it's the Appalachia Judicial Circuit. So basically, it'll give you that circuit. It'll tell you your commission seats. So she happens to be in District 4, and she's on school district post 1, District 1. So the county I'm in basically are at large. So some of us in more rural communities, it might say commission board at large or school board at large. But basically, that tells you everything you're voting for and what district you're in. So that's a tremendous tool, just personally, whether you're a state employee or not. The reason it's good for you as a state employee, though, it tells you your state house member, your state senator, and basically tells you the people that you can contact that are your personal representatives. So if you would keep on going with that, I believe at this time I'm going to turn it over to Emma, and she's going to talk about open states, and then she'll let me know when I need to come back on screen.
Hey everybody, so this page shows the Open States website, where if you go to openstates.org/find-your-legislator, you can simply put in your address and it will show you your state representatives both in the House and the Senate. So it's a very good resource for quickly finding that information. You can go to the next slide. So this is the homepage for the Georgia General Assembly website. It's another great resource, especially during session, for tracking legislation and then finding more information about your legislator. So today we're going to be breaking down this website and how you can best use it. So as you can see at the bottom, session generally runs from the second Monday in January to the end of March, beginning of April, depending on the year. So that is a great time to go to this website to find information. And that's when a lot of the events and committee meetings that you see on this front page will be listed. You can go to the next. Okay. So this is the House member directory and the Senate member directory. If you click on the link, it takes you back to the Georgia General Assembly website. And on these directories, it has a whole list of every House representative and every senator in the state of Georgia. And when you access their different profiles, it shows you more information about them, what bills they may have sponsored, what committees they serve in, and just other general information. And you can use your the information that you got from Open State, where you found your legislator, to just get to know your legislator and what they're working on specifically. So this is the very bottom of the homepage for the Georgia General Assembly website. And so you can see on the left side, we have documents and resources for the House of Representatives. And then on the right side, we have those for the Senate. And so as we're going forward, these are different resources that you can use. They're updated usually daily with just different information on the bills that are going through and passing through. So next slide. So this is an example of what a rules calendar looks like. It's a very useful tool, generally published every day, every legislative day. And so what these calendars show are the bills that are on the table for debate. And so this is an example of the House, but Senate has the same thing. There's a little bit of a difference, Kevin, if you want to go into the difference in the rules calendar for each.
Sure. So basically, what we're trying to do is provide y'all the tools. So when y'all are advocating for our bills or what's going on next session, the floor calendars are published each and every day prior to session, and they're online. The House calendar, so the one you're looking at is the House rules. It says debate calendar. It's under modified structure. So it says Senate Bill 27-46-204. What that means is any of those numbers at any time during the day, the Speaker of the House can call on that bill. So usually there's 2 or 3 pages of these things. We just took a screenshot. Emma took a screenshot of one of the last House calendar we had. The Speaker could call 222 first, 27 first, whatever he wants to do. So it's basically at the pleasure of the Speaker if it's the House. In the Senate, they have a committee on assignments. So the Senate calendar, the only difference is if their calendar were SB 27, SB 46, SB 204, they are required to call it in that order in that day. So basically when I'm planning my day, just for your GWhiz files, when Emma and I are getting ready, I know in the Senate, SB 27 will be the first vote, SB 46 will be the second vote in the Senate, SB 204. So we can sort of plan our time around the Senate based on the calendar that they produce. In the State House, however, we sort of have to monitor that the entire day because those can be called at any time. So unless I get a text from the Speaker's office or one of the floor leaders, which does happen sometimes, to let us know it's about to come up, we just have to monitor that all day. But for your purposes, if we say basically, going back to, we do the daily updates that we're going to put committee members on and let y'all know about our weekly meetings. When we do those and those are put together, you're seeing the floor votes we're talking about, so you can actually see that on the agenda. So we just wanted to remind you, in the Senate, they basically call it in order as it is on the sheet. In the House, the Speaker has that purview to do whatever order he wants to.
Okay, so this is an example of a status sheet. You can find this in the same area that you can find the rules calendars on the bottom of the homepage of the Georgia General Assembly website. These give a good overview as to what is happening with different groups of bills. So at the top, you see the section with House first readers and what committee they were assigned to. So you can see Judy for judicial and so on and so forth. And then it goes on to House second readers, what was listed that day. And then House committee favorably reported. So those were heard in a committee and they were passed through the committee. So, and it goes on to different sections. This is just a small portion of what a status sheet looks like, but it's a really good way to keep up with large groups of bills and how they're progressing and moving through the legislature. Yeah, next slide. So on the main page, also on the main page of the Georgia General Assembly website, in the right top hand corner, there's an option for advanced search. And so this is a great way for finding specific bills and issues. So if you go to this portion of the website, it'll give you the option to put in a bill number, where the bill is, whether it's in the House or Senate. It even gives you an option for putting in keywords. So if you're looking for specific issues or areas, that's a great way to keep up with large groups of bills that are in that specific center. And also just finding it, it's a good way to find just bills, like you can put in HB 321 and that bill will immediately pop up. So it's a really good, fast way of finding specific bills and specific issues that are being looked at.
And the reason that's important from our perspective is Susan and Emma and I will be working closely next session, behind the scenes and together. But when we send out our daily updates, and then Susan looks at that and the things that y'all are going to be advocating for, when we're working on that together, and she sends stuff out, and let's say we're working on HB 242, you can go to that main page and that will automatically pull up the most current version of that bill. So you won't be looking at what they were voting at last week, last month, or even last session. So basically what that does is that puts you immediately working on the version as we're talking about being voted on right now. That's why that's so important.
We can go on to the next slide. Okay, so this is a composite. It's another resource document that's also listed on that front page at the bottom. This is just a small portion of what a composite looks like. It's fairly large. And so what this is specifically looking at are the total bills for both the House and Senate and total resolutions that were introduced, filed, and ultimately signed. So this is a good overall sense of what happened this past session, and what's to come and what's still being looked at. So you can see these numbers at the bottom. Over 1,000 were introduced in the House, nearly 1,000 introduced or through the House and Senate, and then close to 1,000 for House resolutions or House and Senate resolutions. And so those are good numbers to keep up with, and what to expect in upcoming sessions, because those numbers are, roughly what we do see.
And without getting too technical, Vicky, if you go back for just a second, one thing I want y'all to notice out of this, a House bill has to go through the House, the Senate, be passed in the same version, and then it goes to the governor to be signed or vetoed. If you'll notice in the House and Senate, they passed 294 pieces of legislation that went to the governor. But think about it, that's out of 1,176 pieces of legislation. So the pass rate is about 20. I went to UGA, so I'm going to guess 1 out of 4. I'm not too good at the math stuff, but that looks about like 1 out of every 4 close to me. The pending are the ones that did not get through that process. So at the top of the screen, it says biennial legislation session. What that means is everything that did not get passed or signed, unless it was vetoed last year, that can come back up in 2022. So the tracker we're working on right now, Susan, the tracker we used in 21, that's already the basis of our 22 tracker. So we'll start to work there, and we'll make sure that all y'all have access to that. But if you'll notice, the thing out of this to notice the bills, roughly 25% that are introduced actually get passed. If you go down to the resolutions, however, resolutions virtually always pass. Most resolutions are through the House or through the Senate. A bill actually goes into state code. It becomes law. A resolution, think of that as a commendation. So this is basically someone passed, so they're sending condolences, or someone has had a birthday, or somebody in your district did something really, your county wrestling team won the state championship or something like that. Generally, these are go through one house or the other. When it says pending, most of those are because they're joint resolutions, and that means that they have to be passed by the House and by the Senate. So basically, resolutions are a whole lot easier to pass than the bills are, and that's why you see the adopted 752 out of 924. Generally, if those have not been adopted or are pending, those are more controversial type resolutions. So usually most of the ones like that are either joint or it's by a very partisan person that is about a concept that probably doesn't need to be going through and having the stamp of approval by the General Assembly or the Senate. So that's why that's a little different.
We can go on to the next slide. Okay, so back to the home page of the Georgia General Assembly website. At the top, if you see at the arrow, it's pointing to committees. And so committees is a huge thing to keep up with during session. So when a bill is introduced, it will be assigned to a committee that pertains to that specific area. And so if you hit that, the committee's selection, it takes you to the House and Senate, which have different committees depending on the area. What you see on the right-hand side is an example from the House section. So those are, a couple different examples of committees. And so if you click on the committee, it shows the different legislators that are involved in that committee and also what bills have been assigned to that committee at that point. So it's a great way of looking at different areas and who's involved and what bills have been assigned to that specific committee. We can go to the next slide. So on the front page, as you can see, it says upcoming events. Those are lists of different hearings and committee meetings that are happening. So as you can see today, there was a couple, and in the upcoming days, there's more. So that's a great way to keep up with the schedule. During session, there will be pages of pages per day of different committee meetings that are happening. So, and it's constantly being updated. So it's something to, constantly be watching and going through to make sure that, you're keeping up with what's going on. And there's a really convenient resource. So on the side, if you look towards the arrow, there's a camera icon. If you click on that camera icon, it takes you to a video recording of that specific committee meeting. If you can't go in person, lots of people can, especially in the pandemic. It's a great resource for being able to take notes and watch and see what's happening in those committee meetings without physically being there.
Sure. So for those of you who attended the workshop, we did key roles. In the Georgia General Assembly, the vast amount of work is done in the committee level. So we've written down the key roles in the state of Georgia and their contact or particular email address if they had a publicized one. I wanted you to have that. Vicki, if you'll go to the next slide. Most work in the Georgia General Assembly and you as a legislative advocacy team, this is basically where everything's going to happen or occur that basically we can make a difference in. What a lot of us are concerned with is the appropriations committees because they are the ones that give out the money. So when you're hearing, they might be doing this or they could be doing this or this might be added to the budget, the appropriations committee is the one that distributes that funding allocation. So in Georgia, the governor sets the revenue estimate and you can spend no more than that, but then the House and Senate sort of figure out how that's spent. The chairman in the House is Terry England from Auburn, Georgia, and Barry County. And then Blake Tillery is from Vidalia, from Toombs County, I believe, or Montgomery. I think that's Toombs. And basically, they are the two chairmen of appropriations. And then our subcommittees, where a lot of the work's done within the committee, Chairman Katie Dempsey is from Rome. And then Chairman Ben Watson is in the Senate over Health and Human Services. The reason these are important, and we'll talk about committees a little bit more in a minute, but basically the vast majority of work that gets done in the Georgia General Assembly is through the committee work. If there's going to be substantial changes or substantial modifications, generally it's done at that committee level. And again, if you weren't in the workshop, we have also included the staff members who, to be candid, sometimes are a lot more important than the actual elected official because they're there day in, day out, year in, year out. And so while they are, this is a part-time legislature in Georgia. So they're only in session for 40 days a year. Those staff members are there year round. So we always make it a point to get to know Kathleen, Ashley, and Laurie, because really they move things a lot quicker than the elected officials can because they're there full time. So I just want to make sure y'all have these. Next slide, please. We have some major committees we work on that I just want to make sure. So when we're going through the process next year, the Education and Youth Committee and the Judiciary are two primary committees in the Senate. We have very good relationships with Chuck Payne over in Dalton. Danny, that's over in your neck of the woods, I believe. And then Chairman Brian Strickland from
Chuck and I used to work together.
Yeah, that's right. Say that again, Danny.
Chuck and I used to work together. We
Chuck
spent
is
several years with DJJ together. So I've known probably, let's see, I've known him since '96.
Chuck was a tenured DJJ. Well, he retired 30 years out of DJJ, so he understands our work. I mean, the reason I wanted Danny to chime in there, I think we have a good advocate in Chuck. He's been a state employee. He understands sort of how the system works. He knows what a lot of our kids go through because he's been on the DJJ side. So we're just fortunate to have somebody that's been a state employee over that. It's over the Education Youth Committee. So I think we could.
I couldn't agree more. He also is a veteran with the Navy. So in his 30 years with DJJ, went through several different commissioners and changes there. So yes, he completely gets state government work. So
I just think that's a relationship that we as a group should foster and even advance. Danny's got a good relationship with him. I met Chuck about the same time, back in the early mid 90s, back when I met him with his dad. So basically we've got some great contacts with him. Brian Strickland is probably one of the more intelligent folks, and I don't say that lightly. He's just a great guy in the judiciary. He was the governor's floor leader. He gave that up last time to take chairman of judiciary. He's an attorney, and that's a perfect fit for our state right now. So in the Senate, we are really set up for when legislation happens. We've got two passionate people to help get our stuff through. On the House side, to be candid, most of our bills are going to go through juvenile justice. That's just how the system is set up. Chairman Mandy Ballinger. So if we need to really get Cherokee County, if we have staff that are direct from Cherokee, would really be the best person with Mandy. Mandy understands us quite well because she was a former domestic violence advocate in a previous career, I believe. So she gets our field well too. James Burchett from Waycross. If it goes to judicial non-civil, he's an attorney out of Waycross. Health and Human Services, Chairman Cooper is a very influential chairman. She's been in the legislature a long time. She's tenured. She's probably one of the most well-versed chairmen in the state of Georgia. And then a new chairman in education is Matt Dubnik. Our Hall County folks, we need to get them in better touch with him. And if you'll notice, I keep going back to the local level. I have a lot of their cell phone numbers. Emma has some good contacts with some of these legislators, but I'm telling you, they pay attention to the local constituents. They get elected from the local level, not Atlanta. So the better communication we have from our local folks, from our local advocates. So sort of be thinking about the reason I put all these people in the party and the name, people from Whitfield County, Dalton, Henry County, McDonough, Ware County, Waycross, Canton, Cherokee, Marietta, Cobb, and Hall County, Gainesville. They have chairmen in very influential positions that can make or break our bills. So we need to make sure and foster and enhance those relationships. Before we go, I know we said to hold off on questions, but on this particular slide, since this is about advocacy, do any of y'all have questions on this one slide? These are our people. Now, again, somebody could resign. There could be changes, but since it's a biennial session, this should be the same next session unless there's an unexpected change. Any questions on this one slide?
Yeah, so Chairman Sharon Cooper is the person we should send questions to concerning compensation issues that our staff have.
Compensation meaning pay?
Yeah,
issues?
pay, yeah.
Yeah,
The
actually-
kinds of compensation issues that were raised at the GPHSA meeting by people, by men and women in that audience about their compensation packages and the drama that they're experiencing, you know, with their compensation. So this person, Sharon Cooper, is the one that we should be directing our concerns.
Lydia, actually, that would actually be the appropriations committees.
That's
So
appropriation.
basically, yeah, that would be the slide before is Chairman Terry England and Chairman Blake Tillery.
Which one of?
Blake Tillery and Terry England are the appropriations committees.
Mhm.
And what I want to make sure and caution y'all to make sure and use your personal, I know y'all know this, but when you contact the appropriations committee, they're the ones that do the budget. So make sure you don't do it on stationery using your state title. You know, contact them as a constituent or as a Georgia citizen, not
Right.
as a DFACS or DHS employee.
Okay, so that's Tillery, Chairman Tillery.
That's correct. Tillery and Terry England are the two that have power, those type of authority.
Mhm.
Anything to do with money, funding, or basic compensation, those type issues, that's determined by your appropriations committee in the House
Thank
and
you.
Senate.
Thank you, Kevin.
Oh, no problem. Any other questions? Vicki, if you would go forward 2 slides, please. Thank you. Okay, we covered the life of the law in that workshop. I just want to make sure y'all have this. The bottom line, if you look at, we've boiled that down to 7 steps. And really step 4 is the main process. You know, drafting the idea, getting it to the General Assembly, the session. Committees are the key part where most of the work happens. So that's stage 4, although you're showing 7 things, stage 4 is where the vast amount of work is going to take place, whether it's the committee or the rules committee in the House and the Senate. That's probably 80%. And if something's killed, it's more than likely killed or not approved at the committee level. So I just wanted to remind y'all of that without rehashing that. Would be happy to entertain any questions about that in a little bit, but at least I wanted to make sure you'd seen the life of a law again. And as a brief overview, to pass a law, you have to go through the entire House, entire Senate, without one single change. If there's any change, whether it's a word, paragraph, or page, you have to have that reapproved by the other chamber. So both chambers have to do the exact same version before it can go to sit on the governor's desk, just as a friendly reminder. Vicki, next slide, please. So that sort of establishes the process we were just talking about. But the bottom line is a bill before it goes to the governor's desk, it's got to be the same verbiage, word for word. So if it's a 25-page bill, if section 3 and paragraph 2 on page 15 is not resolved, that entire bill does not go forward. So there has to be a compromise on the language before the governor can ever sign it. But that gives you a good flow chart of the process. Next page, please. I want to talk to you about LexisNexis, because this could be your best friend or your worst enemy, depending on how you learn to use this. There are 2 tools, but the state of Georgia provides us LexisNexis. Our general counsel office here uses Westwood, I believe, but LexisNexis is a lot more popular. There's a difference between a bill and a resolution, and you'll need to know that for LexisNexis. A bill is something that becomes law and becomes put in the statutory code. As we mentioned earlier, a resolution is simply an idea or concept, like it's a commendation, proclamation, something just sort of acknowledging and congratulating. So again, that could be anything from congratulating the local football team for winning the state championship to sending a family condolences for losing one of their family members or the loss of a mayor or an elected official. LexisNexis is the tool. So when Susan sends out information or I send out information, she forwards it to y'all saying that there's a bill coming up on House Bill 272 tomorrow. You can go to LexisNexis on the advanced search, which is the link that you have on your sheet. You can put in HB 272, and that will take you to the most current version that they are currently discussing. So basically what you have on this page is puts you literally in the forefront of all the information you need to do the advocacy you want to do. That will put you literally. I think this year, Susan has been great to work with. Wayne was great to work with, but I think we'll have a little bit better. We'll have more bandwidth with Emma being here in governmental affairs. We can probably do a little bit better job on talking points. We can strengthen that this next session. And so basically when you do that, you can get access to what the bill says, what it does, and then we can give you the talking points that if y'all want to reach out and give a particular message, you'll be able to literally have that at your fingertips. So if you would, Vicki, go ahead and go to the next slide. So I know a lot of people, Lydia's already mentioned one question, but the budget cycle is really what a lot of people care about. We can't say anything official, but we're hearing smoke signals and we don't even know what that means. We do believe that there's going to be some type of across the board something that could possibly happen. So take that as you will. You know, last year it was the $3,000 bonus one time. You know, they've already announced a $1,000 pay raise to first responders, meaning policemen, firefighters, state employees that are on the front line of public safety issues. We're expecting to hear something into session about state employees. Just please keep in mind, whatever you hear, DHS is the largest organization in the state of Georgia now. I heard the other day, DFACS alone, we have 1,200 vacant positions. I don't think that shocks any of you. But that tells you we have some onboarding issues. We have some funding issues. We have some staffing issues. You know, having 1,200 vacancies, that tells you a lot.
And Kevin, in my meetings, every meeting I go to, I hear about all the vacancies and the attrition is crazy.
Yeah. We're hearing ancillary stories, and you know, we can't really use this per se, but there are people literally in OFI where they're just walking into the office and handing in their computers and walking back out. They're literally, and if you think about it, you know, the McDonald's in my little hometown is hiring at $15 an hour. You know, and looking at possibly what we pay and looking at the issues, you know, this is a big, you know, we're in critical times. And, you know, you have a lot of people in OFI processing things that services that they could qualify for because of the state pay system as of right now. So I think, I know the leadership here in DHSU, the new leadership understands what we're looking at. I think they're compassionate and they're wanting to help. We were told to give a zero-based budget. I think we've talked about this before. We were required to submit a zero-based budget, meaning we could not ask for any increases for DHS, but we believe what will happen is there will be some type of institution or enterprise-wide, some type of statement, whether that's a bonus. I do want to just remind y'all, regardless of what happens or doesn't happen, your preference would probably be to have a salary increase. And the reason I say that is if it's a one-time bonus, you get that bonus, but it doesn't become part of your base. So If something's done in the supplemental budget, that would be great. But it would be even better if it's in the 22-23 fiscal year budget. I want to make sure that's sort of clear on y'all's end. If it's a one-time bonus, you know, that's great to get that extra money and get that extra check. But I think what a lot of staff are really looking for is that sustainable, ongoing, recurring income. Because if, as an example, the first responders that got a $1,000 bonus, that's wonderful. Police deserve that. Fire people deserve that. But that's a bonus. If it was added to the annual budget, that 1,000 becomes 30,000 in a 30-year career. You see what I'm trying to say? So basically, if it's put into the permanent budget, it's not only 1,000 this year, that becomes part of our base for years moving forward. So just sort of when you're hearing whatever happens, that's important for y'all to remember. There's a difference between the base and a bonus. Next slide, please.
Kevin, can I say something?
Sure. Thanks, Susan.
Hey, Emma, it's nice to meet you. So one of the things we want to do at our next, I'm talking to the GPHSA members that are on the call, at our next meeting, the November meeting, and you don't have these details, so you wouldn't know this, but one of the goals is that we get everybody on all the committees on the same accord of what we're advocating for, so that we can do that personally and privately, but also we can, hopefully there's strength in numbers, we can give the division some idea of what the top things that our employees association is interested in accomplishing, be it a pay raise, a bonus, some streamlining of the hiring process. But I think it gives a little more power to our leadership when they are talking if we have the employee association on one page and are able to say, this is the voice of the employees and this is what we would like to see happen. And so we're hoping to do some of that work on the second day in our committee meetings, which that will be November 9th. The 8th will be a training, and then the board meeting. And I'm working on the registration link for that now. So it'll be going out in the next week to 10 days. But just FYI, I think it'll be great if we develop, and we'll do this in concert with Kevin and Emma, but some talking points that will give us a way to speak sort of in one coordinated effort. Thank you.
And just to back what Susan just said, you know, you can send isolated emails or phone calls or whatever you want to do. And especially with what Lydia was talking about, you know, somebody, if they're talking about their pay, their compensation, they really don't. If you start hearing that stuff, it just sort of kind of falls on deaf ears. Versus when the professional association has a consistent and clear message that is repeated, it's a lot better, it's more well received, and it's a lot more likely to make a difference, to actually lead to action by the House or Senate. So what Susan's saying, I would back 1,000. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying strategy wise, what Susan's saying is so much more effective to do this collectively than an individual manner. So just to remind y'all, our budget's $49.3 billion last year. 23 of that was state, 15 federal. Keep in mind, we have to have a balanced budget. The reason some people, let me put an asterisk when I say this. I really sympathize for Governor Kemp because of the surplus. Because what has happened is if people know you don't have extra money, everybody knows that basically you're probably not going to get more money. What's happened is the way we've gone through this pandemic and candidly through good leadership in Georgia, our economy rebounded quicker than some other states. So if you look at some states right now that are having to cut back, they're trying to figure out what to cut or what not to do, or waiting for the federal governments have to bail out some states right now. Georgia has a $1.4 billion surplus. So, and I'm saying I feel sorry for the current governor, because a lot of states, they know there's not extra state money, so people aren't really asking for anything. I think everybody in Georgia knows there's a $1.4 billion surplus. So I'd say out of that 1.4 billion, he's probably got 11 or 12 billion of requests that have already been sent in, because everybody knows there's extra money. So there's almost an advantage to having a flatline budget, because if everybody knows you don't have money, they're not going to be as passionate and sort of know that there's money out there. So it's going to be interesting to see how that new 1.4 billion is, how they spend that. But again, it's almost from an elected official perspective, you're almost better people knowing you don't have extra money, because those requests, just there's not extra money. But in the situation they're in now, they're going to have to figure out, how to strategically spend it to the best, optimize the state taxpayer money. Vicki, go ahead and go to the next page, please. So I just wanted to leave that in there. GPHSA members can educate and advocate. And I want to remind you that Susan Boatwright is going to be a phenomenal executive director. She lobbies as your official lobbyist. I can't really tell y'all what to say or do as a state employee. I'm just one of 8,000 people here in DHS, but I can tell you there is power and there is strength in numbers, and a clear and consistent message like Susan will help y'all develop. And we will be working behind the scenes, partner lockstep with Susan. So basically, whatever message that y'all come up with, I'm telling you, if you act in unison and act with a common purpose, you are more likely to get things done. So I would strongly encourage you to put on that advocacy hat. Again, just one last time, anything you're doing, please don't use, because you can get in trouble. I would strongly recommend, do not use your state computer, do not use your state website. We had an issue last year where an employee sent on letterhead from DFAX to House and Senate leadership, basically advocating for some things. Be very careful about that. I would personally do it. You have a First Amendment right that is given to you, and that's not prohibited by public service. However, if you start meshing public service with your role with your First Amendment, you're also accountable for anything you do in the capacity as an employee. So that's why we've got GPHSA and Susan as the executive director to help y'all advocate and help y'all get what we need as state employees. So I strongly encourage you, if I communicate advocation or education, I do that before 8 o'clock in the morning, and I do it after 5:01 in the evening. I do it from my personal cell phone. I do it from my personal laptop. I just want to make sure this is a protection. It's not trying to punish anybody or anything. I'm just telling you, this protects you as an employee, because basically you're not doing it on your time, and there can be no allegation or innuendos from that. Susan, would you want to say anything else about that, or is that?
I would like to add, we are looking into retaining a lobbyist that is really well known around human services issues. And while I would still do, everything that I can and what we've done in the executive director capacity before, if we can afford it, I need to talk to some more people about it, but we are looking at retaining someone who is a full-time lobbyist, their services for the duration of the session, not year round, but for that period. So that may happen in 22. It may be another year. We've got to figure out whether we can afford it or not, basically.
As Susan said, those relationships, you build those with steps, not marathon runs. And so basically when a group's looking at doing that, I'm glad to hear you're looking at possibilities, but sometimes it's better not to just jump, because it's hard to herd cats once everything's been done. And if things aren't working out as well, it's good to hear y'all are looking in that direction and thinking about possibilities. Susan, that's good leadership. Next slide, please. So we have the House and Budget Research Office. This is where you're going to get a lot of your information that really you need, that are the nuts and bolts for what you're wanting to advocate for. If you look down at the bottom, it's got the resources, news and highlights, legislative reports, joint budget hearings, staff and about us. The resources they're going to give you, go ahead and go to the next slide, Vicki. Thanks. So if you actually want to see the budget as proposed, or the most current versions, this is where you'll find that. So that's why I want you to have access to the House and Senate budget. This isn't from the legislative page, it's from the House. So that's why Emma put this on the slide for y'all, and she made sure y'all had access to this, because you can't just click from the front page. So you have the slide to show you where to go on this. What you want is always, you want to click on the top version. So whatever you see under FY22, you want that top one, because that's the most current version they're looking at. You can look at the other ones all day long, but that's not going to tell you the current version. So basically, if something was done in the 2 versions ago, that's great. But if it didn't show up in whatever's on top, the most recent link, that's not what they're talking about anymore. So make sure that top version. Vicki, go ahead and go forward. And then that's all really we've got. We'll open for questions. I want to make sure you've got our cell phones, you've got our email addresses. I'm very excited again to have Emma with us. She just brings some diversity and energy, passion. She brings some things that we don't have till she got here. She's got those contacts across the street. I just can't wait to work with her a little bit more. But candidly, I think we're going to be a good team. I do want to mention, I don't have a clock in front of me, Vicki. How close are we to time? Are we up?
We have about 5 minutes, but I don't think anyone would mind. I think if you need to go, please go. And those that can stay, we'll just, because I have a couple of things I need to say as well, but just keep going if you will.
If it's, I wanted to talk just a little bit about org charts for just a second and talk about the direction we're moving in, and just sort of kind of, this isn't coming from Commissioner Brose. This is coming from some things that I just want to share with everybody on the screen from the legislative perspective. So this isn't official DHS, but this is official, state employee that's been in some of the meetings, some of the time, hearing some of the discussions. I want to tell you what's really happened since Commissioner Brose came in. If you look at the new org charts, and I know most of us on this call are probably from DFACS. I think there's some from DHS. There's probably some people from DBHDD. Possibly there's some other agencies, but I think most of us are probably from DFACS. Is there anybody on the call that is not here on the call that's not from DFACS, or any of y'all from DHS specifically?
Kevin, we don't have a lot of members from DHS. We are hoping, Angie and I are hoping this is a great opportunity to expand what we can offer to the other divisions as well. It's primarily been a DFACS, a higher ratio of DFACS employees. So I think that's all you have on this call that I can see. Vicky, is that right?
I think so.
Yeah.
So Susan, Vicky, that's going to allow me to be a little bit more candid and just tell you like it is. There was a lot of us in DFACS that felt like DHS was administrative support and scaffolding. And basically a lot of people felt like they were the tail that wagged the dog. And so basically there have been some behind the scenes discussions with the governor's office for at least the 2 sessions I've been here about how to allow DFACS and the programs and services to have more power in their destiny. So to put that in layman's terms, it's going to be different. Now you have Mary Havoc as the deputy commissioner of DHS. Now you have John Anderson is the deputy commissioner of DHS. You now have Chris Hempfling, deputy commissioner of DHS. So what that means is when you have leadership meetings now, you have not only one person. Previously, Director Rollins was allowed to be in the room. Now there's an organic, innate structure that incorporates DFACS into those leadership meetings. We believe, and I would put my reputation on this is going to give DFACS a much better seat at the table. Because instead of having a DHS leadership that's making decisions and making policies, making protocols, and basically just sort of kind of sending them down to us to implement, our people are ingrained into that process now. So I know I've heard a lot of stuff out in the field, and I've heard from a lot of folks, and implementation can get sideways sometimes. But if you will simply look at that org chart and see what they've tried to do, they have literally simply ingrained the services and the programs into that decision-making process. So again, things will unfold in this next 6-8 months, but I'm telling you the things that DFACS, the messages we've been sending across the street into the governor's office, is a lot of times we were not in control of our own destiny. We were having people make decisions for us that were not necessarily in our best interest. And now, when you have the director of DFACS, who is now also the commissioner of DHS, that is one body. And that is a very symbolic message, but it's also a real message because Chris Hempfling is now over all the programs at DFACS, if you notice the org chart. So Chris is not only division director of DFACS, he now has aging reporting to him, child support reporting to him, and the other ones reporting to him as well. So if you look at that org chart, it just makes good sense from, again, out in the field, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what's being said, but I wanted to make sure you heard here in this meeting, we see this as a very positive step in basically giving the power back to DFACS and allowing us to be, have more say in our administrative decisions. Because there's been, and I don't have to tell, I'm not going to call y'all the names, but Gretchen, Danny, some of y'all that have been out there, been there, bought the t-shirt, there's stuff that DFACS employees have had to implement that basically it was handed down to us and we just got to do it. So now at least we've got somebody on that leadership team. We've got Mary, we've got John, we've got Chris, that are basically the decision makers now that would be part of that process. So, again, I'm not trying to defend the new org chart or anything, but I'm just telling you, if you look at how they've blended that family together, that was the thinking behind it. So I think if you're a DFACS employee, there's a lot to be excited for. I think if you look at pure intentions, it's going to be, I just want to make sure that y'all heard that from somebody if you haven't heard that already. if you hadn't heard the intentions of what's going on, that's what they were trying to do. And I think they've done a very good job so far. Any questions?
So,
Vicky, you're on mute.
good afternoon. This is Gretchen. I don't have a question, just kind of a comment. I think what's going to be important is how it's messaged when it comes down. So we've got an org chart, but there's been no conversation, no discussion about it. And typically, you know, in the county, at the county level, when you see an expansion of the admin at the top, you know, that typically comes with a higher salary, more pay, and then you've got people that are on the front line still struggling. You just had conversation about OFI staff and the struggles that they're in. So I think that, you know, while we want to celebrate and say that this is a success, this is big, you know, for the agency, I think, you know, you just got to be real and know, okay, well, where is that? How are people in the field going to relate to that? And so that's the message that needs to be sent down. And, you know, because when you see 10 more blue slots, then, you know, we've had, you know, because, you know, that's always been a thing with, you know, we're heavy at the top, what's going on down at the bottom, you know, and so just wanted to put that out and be mindful, because that's what I'm hearing as far as conversations coming from staff. You know, what does this mean? What does this look like? You know, where's the pay? There's no pay coming, but how are these people getting, you know, you're not going to get a new position or a change in a name without some money sometimes being associated with it. So that's what I'm just saying is I think we just have to be mindful of what people see and how we message that.
I hear that, and I will relay that information, Gretchen. That's good to know. I will tell you, you know, some of these positions that are technically quote new, they've been basically like the chief operating officer was already on paper. The deputy was already, you know what I'm saying? They just fill those positions because Carol's retired. The major thing is the chief of staff. You know, that was Commissioner Hines' former job. So when you start looking at this, what they've done, it looks like a lot more people, and it may be, but you've blended two families into one org chart.
Right,
So,
I understand. I mean,
and
I understand
can't
what, yeah.
I've been in government long enough to know what you're talking about, though, Gretchen. I hear the salaries and the increases, all that stuff. I know what you're saying, and I hear you clearly.
I think we've done hopefully a good job in Region 1 of communicating the move back under DHS to where, you know, let's say we're 80% of DHS is DFACS, then we go back under that umbrella. Hopefully we'll get 80% of their resources. So right. I think that you know, and I don't know, I'm not going to speak for Gretchen. I think for us and our team here, you know, we have gone years now with very crystal clear communication about what's transpiring, and you know, just constant, whether it's I don't know, it's still an answer and you're still getting communication. And we had about a 2-month gap of really trying to just the rumor mill, which we pretty much did away with the rumor mill for a couple of years. And it's just, you know, when people don't know, you know, our staff are the first to go to the negative mindset. So we're trying to, you know, honestly tell them to, you know, pause, let the dust settle. You know, this is a good move, but I think they need to hear more than just from me or from the county director, right? Things of that nature. So I think this is a great opportunity. And Susan, I love the idea of the November meeting, having the hot topics. And for me, our commissioner, her 3 hot topics would being, you know, IT and HR and high-end population. I could not agree more with that. Everybody wants a pay raise. But if we got those 3 things resolved, people are going to be a whole lot happier with what they're making. And I'm not saying I'm not going to advocate for a pay raise, but if we got technology to where it works and works efficiently, and had streamlining all of our work, whether it's OFI or social services, to where it's easy to do that job, to input, and you don't have to duplicate what you're entering into multiple systems, if that makes sense. If we can streamline that. The hiring, I think you mentioned it, Kevin. We got a Bojangles here in Chatsworth that closes at 6 o'clock on the weekends because they can't find people to work. And, so it's not, that is across the board. You can go to any restaurant and you may have a waitress just covering, double tables because, somebody didn't show up or somebody doesn't work. We do feel the impact there. So I would probably, I don't know what order Commissioner Brose has them in there. For me and my team, it's the high-end kids. Those are the ones that we spend hours and days on end of hoteling kids and behaviors and kids that are just, they're in our care because they can't be maintained in the community by their parents. It's not that their parents, many times it's not that the parent don't love their kid. It's because they can't maintain that kid in a community setting, yet we're hoteling them. And that puts a strain on staff and makes them want to quit. So there's some things there. I don't, the fact that Candace can be here for, a very brief time and name those three things, I'm on board 100%.
I just wanted to add to that conversation, Deanie, I think that's just so well referenced and put everything in context. I know when I was closer to the leadership, when I was working as the communications director, one of the things that was always so hard, even trying to put together a communications team, is that the funding that came through to DFACS specifically was typically tied to eligibility or a child welfare. And so to get some of the supportive framework around your case manager positions to fight for the things that Danny was just talking about, a lot of that money was at the DHS level rather than in the DFACS budget. And so to me, just based on my experience, one of the greatest things about this new organization is DFACS and Child Support and Aging, but Child Support and Aging had access to it before, will have access to some of this admin funding, which is what supports the positions to fight for those things that Danny was mentioning. So I don't know that it's an either or, but it's certainly a plus for DFACS to be at the table and be so strongly represented at the highest level without any next step having to occur. But the conversation around the salary is not changing much since when I was hired 34 years ago, is a conversation that also needs to be had. I think that's where the advocacy of, where our advocacy and examples of stories that we can collect and share to help make a point is very important. But just back to what we were originally talking about, the org chart being much heavier at the top, it is because the top now is as far up as we can see as DFACS, whereas it used to be the DFACS top, and then you had a whole nother shelf on the top of that. And it is just the merging of the two and giving access to an abundance sometimes of administrative funds that can be used to better support. So I think all of it is moving forward in a real hopeful, positive way. We've got to do something about those entry-level frontline positions without question, and salary without question.
And just to what Susan's saying is having seats at the table when those decisions are made. I think it could possibly lead to different decisions and different priorities moving forward. Because if the people at the table are administrative functions, they look at it different than if it's somebody from the program related side of the table. If you look at that, again, not talking about, I get the salary been in government before, but from the particular who's at the table, having the program people at the table, that's going to make different decisions. It's just going to naturally occur over time.
And, you know, certainly my conversation wasn't, I mean, we all are in, I mean, I'm in child welfare. I know what comes with that related to salary. I mean, you know, that was not necessarily my point. I think, you know, my point is just about communication, just about, you know, we had a brief meeting, and, you know, she indicated that something was going to be coming out. Okay, well, now that it's out, let's have some conversation and some talk so that staff are able to ask the questions and find out what they want to find out. And, you know, I understand that the higher up, usually the less it impacts what's going on the ground, you know, so we're still doing business as usual. But I think that, you know, when people see something new, it's good to go ahead and have that conversation. And while I don't know is appropriate at times, you know, let's have access to the people who do know, basically is what I was just saying. And so since you're able to take things back, that was just me putting that out there just to say that, you know, to you or whatever, because that is something that I think is needed. And, you know, while we are blending and coming into different things, I think we still need to have some conversation. This is kind of off the subject, but I think it's important. In the county office, you know, there's still division, and there's still things going on the OFI side that we don't typically get privy to a lot of. And I think that, you know, if we're at one office, we need to really work on that relationship as well, and the blending more back of, you know, those two sides, if you understand what I'm saying. I think now's a good time, since we're doing all this change, to have some conversation about that. And I think we had some momentum going at one point, and then things kind of fell by the wayside.
That communication piece, Gretchen, you are, again, you're so right. You know, we hope to get the road shows started back where leadership can interact with staff locally. Of course, you can only get 3 or 4 regions in a year. But I do know that one of the gifts of the former director was that there was an open line of communication.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
He communicated frequently. So that probably is really good input. Just
keep it going. I mean, I think, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, you all know how you think you've talked to your direct reports, and that information is going down. And while it likely is, I think you said it, Gretchen, it's nice to hear from the people themselves. So that's something that I think Kevin, Emma, y'all could share back, but also if as an association, we can help with that in any way or facilitate any of that, please let us know.
I'm not advocating for a Tuesday with Candace. You know, Tom had Tuesdays with Tom, or I'm not advocating for that at all. So I don't want you taking that back from me, but I do agree with Gretchen. It's just, you know, having that platform, and we've had it really twice, but really hasn't been an open forum to really ask questions. I think some folks are afraid to ask questions because we don't have that relationship. And I think with Tom, he established, you know, after over time, he established where that frontline person in South Georgia wouldn't mind asking Tom a question just because they felt like they're there. With Candace being the commissioner of DHS, I don't know that it's her responsibility to have a conversation and communicate that with us. I feel like that's the DFACS people to have that conversation with us. And I do think there is, in fairness, the dust is still settling. People are still figuring out their roles. When I saw Chris Hempling where he is, I'm like, he won't be handling legal anymore, you know, because he's got all this other stuff that he's got to deal with. I sent him a text and just said, good luck, you know, and so we've got to do, I guess, a better job, you know, and I say we as in, you know, DFACS leaders to be able to communicate that. Completely agree with Gretchen, though, and Susan, when you hear it from somebody other than your normal people, it helps soothe it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Thank y'all.
All right, but we've had a great meeting. We do have some chat comments I'd like to read out real quick. Janedra says, this has been some very helpful information. Thank you so much. Tammy says, this has been a very informative meeting with a lot of very helpful information. Thank you so much. And Miss Kelly says, great meeting. And she had to jump off for another call, but very, very good meeting. I think we all got some nuggets somewhere of things that we didn't see or didn't know. And what I'd like to do is I would like to, Gretchen, you and myself and Miss Susan get together and let's formulate a strategy on how we pull information from our legislative committee members to get on the same page as to what information we need to pull. So what we may can do is have a plan for our November 3rd legislative committee meeting at 1 o'clock. We can go over the topics, the hotspots, the information that we've gathered to see if we want to add anything to it or anything like that. And then possibly at the committee meetings in November, the 8th or 9th, collectively as a committee, pick however many that we need to say, this is a collective, this is the most, comes up all the time. And I'm sure across the committees, we're probably going to see the same things. I'm thinking. And how do we need to come up with the supportive documentation, the examples, the evidence, as you would say, to present our case? You know, here are some legitimate concerns, complaints, and just show example after example after example, and how we're hurting and where the bleeding areas are, and what we need to help stop that. So I just want to thank Kevin and Emma so much for taking time out of their busy schedule, and all of you guys. I know we're all running as fast as we can go and hard as we can. But thank you for joining us today. It's been very informative, something we all needed. So I would like to get some ideas. You can email me of, you know, upcoming trainings you'd like to see. If you want to dive a deeper dive into the what the bill does as it crosses over. You know, we have the Advocacy Academy that's going to probably start up. You know, maybe something to start putting some emphasis behind that and get that going. But anyway, any other questions before we wrap up? I know we've gone over a little bit today, but it's been really good discussion, really good stuff. Anybody?
I just wanted to add, yes, it has been great discussion. Thank you again, Kevin. Your workshop was great, and this was a good follow-up to that, and I appreciate it. And welcome aboard, Emma. That's what I meant to say earlier. I'm looking forward to working with you. And I do apologize for not having my camera on. We had a late removal. I've been up all night, and so I'm really tired, and I do apologize. So next meeting, I will definitely have my camera on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It was a great workshop, and see you guys next time.
Yeah, I enjoy free workshops.
Free work.
Yeah, free is the key, huh?
Free is for me.
Yeah.
So we know our legislative agenda a little bit more now, so maybe y'all might want to hear about that one of these days.
Yes.
Not today.
Yeah.
Definitely, because we'll have to get geared up for the session's going to start before we know it, and we have to be ready to go. And so
that's what I thought. I was hoping we'd talk a little bit about in November when we have our meeting. So in addition to what you said, because I think that's a great time to do that, and then also to kind of talk about what Kevin is talking about now, is leading us into that.
Yes,
where the work is. So,
awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that's all I had on my checklist to do. Gretchen or Susan, do you have anything you'd like to add before we wrap this thing up? Put a bow on it?
Thank you.
Okay.
Me too. I'm just love all the energy and conversation and excitement. So thank y'all.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks again for taking time to be with us, and we look forward to seeing you again in November. Y'all have a good one. All right.
Bye.
Bye.